Dollarization, the strategic effort to reduce reliance on the United States dollar in international trade and finance, has long been associated with BRICS nations. These countries, driven by a shared interest in asserting financial sovereignty and mitigating vulnerabilities tied to the United States-dominated global financial system, have actively pursued alternatives to the dollar. Over the past decade, BRICS countries have been at the forefront of dollarization for several reasons. Now, dollarization has expanded to Europe, led by France. In this video, we explore the growing trend of dollarization, which is now extending beyond the BRICS nations and gaining traction even among United States allies. Before diving into the specifics of France's recent move supported by the EU, let's first examine the evolution of trade between the EU and China over the years. The trade relationship between China and the European Union has evolved into one of the most significant and complex economic partnerships globally, characterized by deepening ties, strategic collaboration, and growing challenges. Over the years, the relationship has undergone various phases, from formalized cooperation to contentious trade disputes, reflecting both shared interests and divergent priorities. The historical foundations of the China-EU trade relationship trace back to 1975, when the European Economic Community established diplomatic relations with China. This milestone laid the groundwork for economic engagement, culminating in the signing of the Trade and Economic Cooperation Agreement in 1985. This agreement formalized the burgeoning trade relations, setting the stage for sustained growth in bilateral trade. China's accession to the World Trade Organization in 2001 marked a turning point, significantly boosting trade flows between the EU and China by reducing trade barriers and aligning with international trade rules. China's WTO membership allowed European businesses to tap into the Chinese market while increasing Chinese exports to the EU. In 2003, the two entities elevated their partnership by establishing a comprehensive strategic partnership, signaling a commitment to broad-based cooperation. Over the decades, China has emerged as a critical trading partner for the EU. By 2023, China was the EU's third-largest export destination and its largest source of imports. The volume of goods traded between the two economies reached approximately €2.3 billion daily, underscoring the economic interdependence. Key sectors of trade include machinery, vehicles, pharmaceuticals, and consumer goods, reflecting diverse economic complementarities. However, the trade relationship is marked by a significant structural imbalance. The EU consistently experiences a trade deficit with China, which reached nearly €400 billion by 2023. This disparity highlights the EU's heavy reliance on Chinese imports, particularly in electronics, textiles, and industrial machinery, while facing barriers to market access in China. The past few years have witnessed rising tensions in the China-EU trade relationship. In 2023, the EU initiated an anti-subsidy investigation into imports of Chinese electric vehicles, citing concerns about unfair competition due to state subsidies. This move, aimed at protecting the EU's domestic industries, sparked strong reactions from Beijing. In retaliation, China launched anti-dumping investigations into European exports, including pork and dairy products, in 2024. These actions have escalated into broader trade disputes, reflecting growing friction over market practices and regulatory frameworks. In November 2024, China filed a formal complaint with the WTO against the EU, challenging the bloc's tariffs on Chinese EVs and accusing the EU of protectionism. Recent years have witnessed a surprising development. Western nations, historically aligned with the US in financial policy, are now exploring avenues to reduce dollar dependency. Notably, countries like France and Germany have taken steps that align with dollarization principles. In March 2023, France's TotalEnergies and China's China National Offshore Oil Corporation executed China's first yuan-settled liquefied natural gas transaction via the Shanghai Petroleum and Natural Gas Exchange. This landmark deal involved approximately 65,000 tons of LNG imported from the United Arab Emirates. This transaction signifies a strategic shift by French companies toward yuan-denominated trade, aiming to reduce reliance on the US dollar and strengthen economic ties with China. The move aligns with China's broader objective to internationalize the yuan and challenge the dollar's dominance in global trade. Following this precedent, other companies have engaged in yuan-settled LNG trades, including a deal between CNOOC and France's NG in October 2023. The European Union has expressed concerns over the weaponization of the US dollar, particularly through sanctions that impact European businesses. Such measures have prompted discussions within the EU about reducing dependence on the dollar. The euro's share in global foreign exchange reserves declined to 20% in 2023, its lowest in 2 decades, as reserve managers favored the US dollar and Japanese yen. To bolster the euro's international standing, the EU has implemented measures to enhance its role in global finance. These initiatives include promoting the euro's use in energy contracts and developing a digital euro to increase its attractiveness in international markets. The European Central Bank emphasizes the need for further financial integration within the EU to strengthen the euro's global position. Western nations are increasingly participating in dollarization efforts due to several key factors. Engaging in non-dollar trade with major economies like China offers significant financial advantages. China, as the world's largest exporter, has been actively promoting the use of its currency, the yuan, in international trade. This shift allows Western countries to access more favorable trade terms and diversify their foreign exchange reserves, reducing reliance on the US dollar. For instance, in 2023, China and Brazil reached an agreement to conduct trade in their own currencies, bypassing the dollar. The growing momentum of global dollarization has sparked concern from US President-elect Donald Trump, who has issued a stern warning to countries in the BRICS bloc: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Trump has expressed alarm over the bloc's discussions on reducing reliance on the US dollar and exploring the creation of a new reserve currency to rival the dollar's dominance. In a recent statement, he threatened to impose sanctions of up to 100% on BRICS nations actively pursuing these alternatives. Trump's concerns are rooted in the potential economic and geopolitical ramifications of such actions. The dollar has long been the cornerstone of international trade and finance, granting the US significant leverage in global markets. A shift away from dollar hegemony could weaken this influence, disrupt financial stability, and diminish the ability of the US to impose effective economic sanctions. The dollar's role as the world's primary reserve currency is not just an economic advantage but a strategic asset for the United States. Trump stated any coordinated effort to undermine this status will be met with the full weight of US economic power, including sanctions that could reach 100% on trade with countries participating in such initiatives. BRICS nations have recently accelerated discussions on alternatives to the dollar, citing the need for greater financial independence. China and Russia, in particular, have spearheaded efforts to trade in their national currencies and reduce dollar-denominated reserves. The establishment of mechanisms such as the BRICS Contingent Reserve Arrangement and ongoing talks about a unified currency highlight their commitment to de-dollarization. Trump's proposed sanctions would represent a significant escalation, potentially affecting a wide range of industries and international trade flows. However, such measures could also provoke retaliatory actions and further galvanize support for de-dollarization among other nations wary of US economic dominance. Analysts note that while the US maintains a strong position in global finance, the steady growth of alternative systems and the increasing economic clout of BRICS countries pose a credible challenge. This is not just a theoretical threat, said a leading economist. If major economies start conducting substantial trade outside the dollar, it could have a ripple effect, accelerating the decline of dollar primacy. As President-elect Trump prepares to assume office, his administration will likely face the complex challenge of balancing punitive measures with diplomatic efforts to maintain dollar supremacy. The international community, meanwhile, watches closely as the outcome of this standoff could reshape the architecture of global finance for decades to come. Diversifying currency usage enables Western countries to mitigate exposure to US monetary policies and potential sanctions. The US has historically leveraged the dollar's dominance to enforce economic sanctions, which can have widespread implications. By adopting alternative currencies, nations can maintain greater sovereignty over their economic activities. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have been at the forefront of this movement, seeking to reduce dependence on the dollar to enhance their geopolitical autonomy. The emergence of a multipolar global financial system encourages Western countries to consider alternatives to a single dominant currency. The BRICS bloc, for example, has explored creating a new reserve currency to challenge the dollar's hegemony. While the dollar remains dominant, accounting for approximately 58% of global foreign exchange reserves. Initiatives by emerging economies signal a shift towards a more diversified financial landscape. The involvement of Western nations in de-dollarization amplifies its significance. What was once seen as a BRICS initiative is now a broader global trend. This evolution could accelerate the development of alternative financial systems and currencies, potentially reshaping global trade norms. However, the dollar remains dominant with over 50% of international reserves and global trade still denominated in USD. The shift is gradual but highlights the evolving dynamics of global power and finance. France has increasingly engaged in trade transactions denominated in Chinese yuan, reflecting a strategic shift towards diversifying currency usage in international trade and reducing reliance on the US dollar. In March 2023, Total Energies, a French energy company, completed China's inaugural yuan-settled liquefied natural gas trade with the China National Offshore Oil Corporation via the Shanghai Petroleum and Natural Gas Exchange. This transaction involved approximately 65,000 tons of LNG imported from the United Arab Emirates. During a state visit to China in April 2023, French President Emmanuel Macron oversaw the signing of a significant yuan agreement between French shipping giant CMA CGM and China State Shipbuilding Corporation. The deal, valued at 21 billion yuan, approximately $3.1 billion, entailed the construction of 16 vessels, marking the largest shipbuilding order placed in China to date. In 2023, the total trade value between China and France reached 555.1 billion yuan, 781.2 billion euros, reflecting a 3.1% year-on-year increase. China's imports from France amounted to 262.42 billion yuan, a 10.9% rise compared to the previous year. In the first quarter of 2024, bilateral trade totaled 127.22 billion yuan, $17.99 billion. From 2019 to 2023, China's trade with France grew at an average annual rate of 5.9%. In the first quarter of 2024, France solidified its position as China's leading European Union source of agricultural imports with a total import value of 10 billion yuan. This surge was driven by significant increases in dairy, pork, and wine imports, reflecting China's growing demand for high-quality French agricultural products. French exports to China reached 266.4 billion yuan in 2023, underscoring the robust trade relationship between the two nations. Concurrently, China has maintained its role as a vital supplier of consumer goods to France. In the same period, Chinese exports of home appliances to France grew by 30.6% year-on-year, while toy exports increased by 28%. Overall, China's exports to France amounted to $49.8 billion in 2022, highlighting the strong demand for Chinese products in the French market. These developments underscore the deepening economic ties between France and China, characterized by a balanced exchange of agricultural and consumer goods. The mutual benefits derived from this trade relationship contribute to the economic growth and diversification of both countries. However, recent trade tensions have introduced challenges. In October 2024, China imposed temporary anti-dumping measures on European brandy imports, primarily affecting French cognac producers. This action was in response to the EU's decision to apply tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, indicating a tit-for-tat escalation in trade disputes. The French government has criticized these measures as political and unjustified and plans to challenge them at the World Trade Organization. Despite these tensions, both nations continue to seek avenues for cooperation. In May 2024, during the China-France high-level economic and financial dialogue, both sides reaffirmed their commitment to deepening economic exchanges and enhancing trade relations. This dialogue underscores the importance both countries place on maintaining a stable and mutually beneficial economic partnership. The adoption of the yuan in bilateral trade allows French companies to mitigate risks associated with the US dollar and reduces exposure to American financial extraterritoriality. By conducting transactions in yuan, French firms can bypass US banks as intermediaries, facilitating direct purchases in China. These developments align with China's broader strategy to internationalize the yuan and diminish reliance on the US dollar in global trade. The increasing use of the yuan in international transactions could enhance the global role of Chinese banking institutions and reshape the international financial system. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching this video.